Hey everyone, welcome to Decision Desk HQ's new show, Let Me Finish. I'm here with my esteemed panel. We have Kirk Beto, editor of Hotline, and Michael Pruser, data analyst at Decision Desk HQ. A reminder, we are here on Tuesdays and Fridays leading up to November 5th's election, where we will be here all night analyzing the election for as long as it takes, so make sure to tune in then. So we're going to start today by going through our polling numbers, what's happening right now. So nationally, we have Harris up by 3.7. These numbers have come out since Harris has raised over $540 million in the past, 5 weeks, which means she has Trump by about 200 million. So we'll see what that does for her in the coming months. We have Arizona, where Trump is up by only 0.1%. This is a state that Trump lost by just 10,000 votes in 2020, so he has a lot of room to grow there. Nevada, we have a Trump at +1 point. Nevada has definitely been shifting red over the past 10 years. Georgia, we have Trump up by 2.7 points. Maybe his change in attitude towards Governor Kemp had something to do with this, going from sort of blistering attacks to a serious olive branch, who knows? We have North Carolina that has Harris up by 1.1 points. North Carolina is always a perennially purple state. So we'll see what happens, and that could really change easily over the coming months. Wisconsin, we have Harris up by a solid 3.3 points. This was won by Biden in 2020 by a really small amount. So this is definitely a state that pre-Kamala taking over, that the Trump campaign was really targeting, but maybe less now so. Michigan, we have Harris up by 2.5 points. The anti-Israel vote there really seems to matter. How much, I think we'll find out, but Harris is really leading as compared to what Biden was doing. And finally, we have Pennsylvania, which Harris is leading by 1.1 points. A lot of people were saying that Harris should have chosen Josh Shapiro, the governor there, in order to carry Pennsylvania, but maybe she doesn't need to, and she's going to carry it anyway, even without him. So that leads us into our first discussion, which is what's going to happen to these polls? Are we going to see a post-Democratic National Convention bump for Harris even more than what she already has? Kirk, what do you think?
Well, I don't know how we're going to be able to differentiate between what is a post-convention bump and what is just a continual uptick in her polls right now. She's about to race the gap in the national poll that existed between Trump and Biden, and now she's in the lead in the average of the national polls that we have on DDHQ. And so I don't know how we're going to be able to tell the difference. The Trump campaign was out with a memo this weekend from their pollsters talking about how Harris might have a brief, emphasis on brief, from the Trump campaign jump in the polls here in the next few weeks from that, and she'll get that traditional convention bounce. And I don't know how they're going to be able to differentiate it. And I think it's an important thing to remember that after Trump's nomination, after the RNC, he didn't get that bounce because the RNC wrapped on Thursday with his speech. Sunday, the race had completely changed when Biden stepped down. You didn't see him get a sympathetic vote as well after he was shot the week before. So we're kind of in this weird situation where, again, this is a big norm-busting campaign season, and another norm that might be busted here is that post-convention bounce that traditionally candidates enjoy.
Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Kirk. I think that if we do see a bounce, it's going to be very short-lived. We have a debate coming up, or we're supposed to have a debate in about 10 days. And I think if that debate does happen, I think that will probably take precedent over anything that happened at the convention. And that's going to be what's talked about over the coming weeks. So the DNC, I don't know that it was very memorable. I thought it was well put on. I thought everybody had pretty good speeches, but I don't know that there was a defining moment that would necessarily shoot Harris even further up in the polls. I think what we see right now is that she's gained a little bit nationally, which makes good sense. But as you rattled off the toss-up states, this is still razor-thin margins we're talking about here. So, any of those 7 states, there's all kinds of different combinations that work for both candidates in order to get to 270. Neither campaign probably feels very comfortable right now with where they are in the polls. And I expect that polling will continue to probably tighten as we get further or closer to Election Day, then probably spread out. Past elections we've seen in 2016 and 2020 with Trump as the candidate, these things have tightened closer to November than they have kind of widened. So DNC polling bump possible, but I don't think it matters when we're talking about the election in November.
Well, as Kamala's numbers are going up, we'll see if that debate can put a pin in her balloon or not. But I guess that brings us especially to ads. I mean, what matters more than that in terms of what's going to happen with polling? So, Kirk, I mean, what's going on? What do you see as the future for the ad buys for both the Trump and the Harris campaign, especially post Labor Day, in terms of reservations as to what's going to happen as the election gets going?
Well, the way I think of the presidential election year is, we divided into quarters here. The start of the third quarter was that disastrous debate that Biden had in June, and the end of the third quarter was the wrap up of the conventions. The start of the fourth quarter is after Labor Day. And for folks who watched our show from last week, we were talking a lot about how we should start really zeroing in on these polls after Labor Day, because that's when the more general public's starting to tune into the race. That's also when the advertising wars start as well. Now, the nonpartisan research firm Ad Impact estimates that this is going to be the most expensive election of our lifetime, with over 10 billion ads worth $10 billion worth of ads spent on the airwaves alone between presidential, Senate, House, and gubernatorial races. The bulk of that is going to come from the presidential race. And if we look ahead at some data that Ad Impact has right now, in those 7 swing states that are going to decide this election, Democrats have a pretty handedly lead in ad reservations booked through the end of the year. I believe it's something around about 5-1 right now, if not 6-1 in some states, Democratic advantage. Now, and that's before Harris has even put the advertisements for a $370 million ad campaign that she announced last week. Now, during the DNC, Republicans did have the advantage on the airwaves. They were spending a lot more money than Democrats, to the tune of about $42 million in several battleground states. The Democrats were content to let the DNC be their own paid infomercial for Harris and for the Democrats all over the ticket. But with Harris's sizable buy there, I mean, these voters in those 7 swing states are about to get bombarded with advertisements. The Trump campaign, while it closed the gap on the fundraising front with Biden in the final weeks of that matchup, since Harris has entered the race about 36 odd days ago, she's raised over $540 million for her campaign and her affiliated groups. In the DNC alone, during the DNC week alone, the Harris campaign raised $82 million. And all that money is going to come to a television screen near you in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and all those other states. They have a real big cash advantage right now over Trump, who's really struggling to find a message. So as more voters get to know Harris, as more voters get to know Tim Walz, a lot of that information is going to come from this advertising onslaught that we're going to see here starting off next week.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking about the Clinton campaign, where she basically in 2016 she outspent Trump 2-1, and he still won. But at some point, it's all about the money, honey. So who knows whether, depending on how much she can outspend him, what that will really do. Michael, do you think are you with us on the money, or what do you think?
I think there's a law of diminishing returns when it comes to advertising and how much money you can actually put in where it actually makes a difference. If you're outspending your opponent 5-1, 10-1, 20-1, there's probably a limit to where it's actually valuable for you. That money should be diverted to turnout campaigns and registration drives and other things that can drive turnout so that your voters are showing up in November, especially in swing states. These are swing states that have been getting bombarded for years and years and years now. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. They've been at front and center now for 3 or 4 consecutive cycles. And starting Labor Day, going to November, they've got to be tired of all of the advertisements. And they probably just tune it out at a certain point. So I know that Harris has a substantial advantage in advertising, and she's going to continue to have an advantage through Election Day. But I don't think that it's going to have that great of an impact. How much more can you say about Donald Trump right now? I don't think there's anything more. Everybody has an opinion on Donald Trump. I think there's 100% saturation there. But She can use it to define herself, define some of her policy goals. I think that's something that she hasn't done much of right now. And I'd like to actually take that opportunity to lead into our next segment here and see if you guys think that Kamala should spend more time in defining her policy. She's still an unknown candidate in terms of what she wants to bring to the White House. She's trying to run away from the Biden campaign. She's trying to run with the Biden campaign when it suits her. And there's a question on whether or not she has to define herself and spend more time in laying out her policy goals. I personally don't believe that's probably something she needs to do. I think staying ambivalent and staying in the middle is a best strategy to kind of win herself the White House. But Liberty, what do you think? Is it something that you think Kamala should spend more time on, actually nailing down policy and maybe even putting up something on her website that voters know what she's all about?
You know, the only people I've heard say that she needs to define her policy are media pundits and political strategists. And so I've never heard a voter be like, I want to know her policy better. So I think she's really comfortable right where she is, and it's clearly working. Her polling numbers are increasing, and she hasn't had to lay out her policy. She hasn't had to lay out her policy on really controversial topics like Israel and Gaza and stuff that could alienate voters. So while it's working, why not keep riding it the way it is? So I think it's more the media that are dying for things to sort of grab onto that we're seeing this kind of discussion about. But Kirk, I don't know. What do you think?
As a biased member of the media, I am.
Sorry.
I'm very. Look, you nailed me. I want her to sit down for an interview. I want her to do one of those long-form interviews with Lester Holt, with the New York Times that Biden has not done, with Washington Post. We want to define. We want to see how she can define who she is and what her priorities are right now. Yes, she talks about wanting to defend reproductive health. Yes, she has said during the DNC that one of her day one priorities was to try to move on the bipartisan border bill that died in the Senate. Those are two things that we can kind of latch onto right now, but she's still so undefined. She still has not really faced unscripted moments yet. Knock wood, we see something happen in the debate that's supposed to take place on September 10th, but Michael, as you alluded to, that's a little up in the air right now. It seems like the campaigns are disagreeing on the format. It's a smart political move not to give Trump and Republicans concrete things to jump on. But as it, stands for small d democracy and holding elected officials accountable, it doesn't pass the smell test.
I mean, I think part of what's happened with Kamala is she's been rebranded as a moderate, basically, by the media and by people in general, given that she came as the furthest left senator that there was. Why bring out your policy and why give the Trump campaign something to grab onto, as you said, and really nail her on, instead of all they have is Comrade Kamala, which isn't working. But I think that wraps us up for today. We'll be back here on Friday, so make sure to tune in. For all your election and polling updates, make sure to go to DecisionDeskHQ.com. I have my fabulous panel here with me: Kirk Beto, editor of Hotline; Michael Pruser, data analyst at Decision Desk HQ; and I'm Liberty Vittert, professor at Washington University in St. Louis. And make sure to tune in every Tuesday and Friday as we come to you with new updates. And of course, on November 5th, we have our entire election coverage. We will be here with a rotating group of, in my biased opinion, very smart minds, discussing and analyzing what's going on as long as it takes for the election to be decided. So make sure to check us out on November 5th.